My name is Olivia. I'm 28 years old. And on my birthday, my mother handed me a cake that was already missing half its slices. Everyone at the table burst into laughter. Phones came out instantly, recording like this was some kind of viral moment. My mom beamed, clearly pleased with herself, and announced that she'd rescued the cake from the dumpster behind the bakery. She said it like it proved how clever she was. Like I should be impressed. I stared at the uneven frosting, at the bare cardboard where someone else's portions had been. And for a moment, it felt uncomfortably familiar. Like that empty space had always been reserved for me. That was the second I stopped lying to myself about my family. I'd driven all the way to a trendy burger place in the suburbs, telling myself that maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. That maybe I wouldn't just be the broke, unstable daughter everyone tolerated out of obligation. Instead, I got a trash cake, a room full of laughter aimed in my direction, and one unexpected advantage. I didn't make a scene. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I leaned toward my uncle and quietly whispered 7 words that erased his smile instantly. I told him I knew about the insurance. 2 weeks later, the same people who laughed at me couldn't stop calling. Panic had replaced their jokes. Suddenly, they cared. Suddenly, everything felt urgent. But none of it actually started with the cake. A few days before my birthday, my cousin Kara texted me. "Mom's planning something for you. Don't freak out. Just come." Kara has always been different. She talks to me like I'm a person, not a project that failed to launch. So when she said it might be nice, I let myself believe her. I just finished another exhausting day of freelance design work, the kind where you work 12 hours and still calculate groceries twice. The idea of sitting through another family comparison session made my stomach twist. But Kara promised the place was cute. She said my mom seemed excited. So I did what I always do. I swallowed the dread. I put on makeup. I convinced myself that maybe this time I wouldn't leave feeling smaller. The drive took me past quiet streets lined with identical houses and perfect lawns. The restaurant looked straight out of a lifestyle blog, exposed brick, hanging lights, reclaimed wood tables, a giant American flag dominating one wall. The smell of bacon and expensive fries hit me as soon as I walked in. My mom was already seated, posture rigid, presiding over the table like a monarch. Brittany sat beside her, scrolling endlessly, nails immaculate. My dad sat across from them, shoulders slumped, present but barely participating. Uncle Mark was mid-rant, loudly mocking a coworker who'd been fired for not handling pressure. "Birthday girl," my mom announced when she saw me, rising just enough to brush my cheek with an air kiss. "You look nice." Finally dressing a little more feminine. I glanced at my plain black dress. Nothing special. Somehow, it still felt like I'd failed a test. I slid into the chair beside Kara. She squeezed my hand under the table, silent reassurance. Brittany didn't even look up. "Oh my God, look at this," she said, shoving her phone toward my mom. Some influencer was unboxing a bag that probably cost more than my rent. "We should go shopping this weekend. That new mall has a Tesla showroom." "Maybe for your promotion celebration," my mom said proudly. She's only 25 and already moving up. Such a hard worker. My dad murmured something supportive without lifting his eyes from his drink. Uncle Mark leaned back, eyes scanning me. "Still doing that art thing?" "Graphic design," I corrected. "I freelance." "Freelance," he repeated, smirking. "Must be nice working whenever you feel like it." "When I was your age, I was grinding overtime every week." "It doesn't work like that," I said carefully. "If I don't work, I don't get paid." "Well," my mom interrupted, "maybe if you stopped chasing creative dreams and got a real office job, you wouldn't be so stressed." Kara tried to step in. "She's actually really good, she showed me her work." "That's sweet," my mom said without looking at her. "But talent doesn't pay retirement." Brittany laughed quietly. "At least she avoids office politics." "Office jobs are adulthood," my mom replied. Mark nodded approvingly. People today want flexibility, remote work, mental health days, he said, making exaggerated air quotes. Back then, you sucked it up. Something inside me tightened at that. I focused on my salad, cutting it into pieces just to keep my hands steady. My dad finally looked up. Let's just have a nice dinner. He said it like someone tossing a towel onto a fire without checking if it was still burning underneath. And then the waitress arrived, smiling, unaware that this wasn't a celebration at all, it was a setup. My mom ordered another round of drinks and made sure everyone within earshot knew it. It's her birthday, she said brightly. Put it on my card. She said it loud, like she was auditioning for the role of generous mother of the year. I sat there while conversations floated over me, promotions, bonuses, trips they were already planning, every detail reinforcing how their lives were moving forward while mine was treated like a cautionary tale. Not a journey. A warning. Have you ever been surrounded by people who claim to love you, yet somehow you only exist as the joke that keeps the table entertained? I told myself I could survive one dinner. Smile when required. Nod on cue. Ignore the comments designed to sting just enough to remind me where I ranked. Eat. Leave. Go home. I didn't know the worst moment was still waiting. When the food arrived, I felt a brief sense of relief. Plates hit the table, burgers stacked high, baskets of fries, onion rings, my grilled chicken salad that I ordered more out of habit than hunger. For a few minutes, chewing replaced talking. My mom raised her glass. To Olivia, she said, smiling sweetly, may this finally be the year she finds some stability. Laughter followed, light and easy, like it was affectionate instead of cutting. I smiled back, throat tight, counting silently. Just get through this. Just make it to the end. That's when the lights dimmed. A small group of servers appeared, one of them carrying a platter with sparklers flickering on top. My chest lifted despite myself. For a split second, I wondered if I'd been wrong. Maybe they'd actually tried. Then I saw it. It was a chocolate cake, but only half of one. The missing side was gone completely, leaving rough frosting smeared across the exposed edge. Crumbs clung to the empty section of the plate. A single candle leaned awkwardly out of the remaining portion, already melting. The laughter started before the servers finished singing. Oh my God, Brittany gasped, phone already in her hand. What is that? My mom pressed a hand to her chest, half proud, half pleased. Isn't it funny, she said. I found it behind the store. Can you believe people throw away perfectly good cake? The servers froze for a beat, clearly unsure if this was a joke they were supposed to understand. I stared at the cake, my brain lagging behind reality. You got my birthday cake, from the trash? I asked. Oh relax, she said, waving it off. Mostly the discount section. Someone returned it or something. It's fine. We're not picky. Uncle Mark laughed so hard he slapped the table. Now that's budgeting, he said. A trash cake. That's a story. Brittany zoomed her camera toward me. Guys, look, she said into her phone. Mom literally dumpster dived for Olivia's birthday cake. Say hi. The lens hovered inches from my face. My skin burned. It felt like the entire restaurant was staring, even if they weren't. Somewhere behind me, a kid's voice rang out, trash cake. Before being hurriedly shushed. The word stuck anyway. Kara leaned toward me. That's not funny, she whispered. It's a joke, my mom insisted, laughing. We love you. Now blow out the candle. Make a wish. She paused, smiling. Maybe wish for a real job. The table exploded again. I looked at the cake, the uneven frosting, the fingerprints smudged into chocolate, the empty space where half of it should have been. I thought about unpaid invoices, maxed out cards, and every time I'd been told this was my fault for choosing the wrong path. I thought about Mark earlier, bragging about toughness, about working through pain, about how weakness deserved consequences. Something inside me didn't explode. It shut down. I leaned forward, blew out the candle in one breath, and smiled, not for them, not for the cameras, but because something had finally gone quiet inside me. "Aren't you going to eat some?" Brittany asked, still filming. "I'm good," I said calmly. The sound of my own voice surprised me. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loudly across the floor. "Wait, where are you going?" my mom asked, her laugh faltering. "I'm done," I said, picking up my bag. Then I turned to Uncle Mark. He was still smiling, but I saw it, the flicker of recognition, the split-second fear of someone remembering something they shouldn't have said near me. I leaned down until my mouth was beside his ear. The table quieted just enough to hear the kitchen sizzling behind us. "I know about the insurance," I whispered. 7 words. His body went rigid. The grin vanished like it had never existed. His hand tightened around his beer. "What?" he muttered. I straightened, met his eyes, and gave him a polite little smile. "Enjoy the cake," I said. Then I walked away. Behind me, confusion rippled through the table. My mom called my name. Brittany asked if she'd caught that on video. I didn't look back. Outside, the night air hit my face, cool and steady. My heart was racing, but my mind had never felt clearer. 2 weeks later, the uncle who laughed the loudest would be calling nonstop, panicked, desperate, suddenly very aware of how fragile his world actually was. And if you're wondering why those 7 words terrified him more than any argument ever could, that story starts 4 months earlier, when I was just trying to help my mom clean out an old laptop. About 4 months before that birthday dinner, I was sitting at my mother's kitchen table, surrounded by a mess she pulled out of a hallway closet. Old chargers knotted together, a printer that looked like it belonged in a museum, and the laptop she'd been complaining about for weeks all sat in a sad pile in front of me. "This thing is useless," she said, pushing the computer toward me. "It sounds like it's about to take off. Can you clean it up so I can give it away or something? You know how to do all that tech stuff." I didn't correct her. I wasn't some kind of expert, just the family member who always got handed the tedious tasks no one else wanted. I flipped the laptop open and waited while it groaned its way to life. The fan whined, the screen flickered, and eventually her cluttered desktop appeared, dozens of random files, screenshots, and half-labeled folders scattered everywhere. "Just don't delete anything important," she called from across the room while pouring coffee. "All my health and insurance paperwork is on there somewhere." I nodded. This was normal. I handled the invisible work that kept everything running while being told I didn't have a real job. I started organizing, moving old photos and recipes onto an external drive. When it came time to make sure nothing important was left behind, I opened her email account. I was planning to skim for anything recent and move on. That's when I noticed a folder pinned to the top. It was labeled Medical Claims, marked with a star, and packed with unread messages. Way more than anything else in her inbox. Curious, I clicked it. At first, it looked routine, policy updates, claim numbers, automated reminders. Then one subject line stopped me cold. Accident documentation, immediate review required. The date was from the year before. I remembered my Uncle Mark mentioning a car accident around that time. He talked about back pain, time off work, how stressful the paperwork had been. My mom had played the role of the overwhelmed but devoted sister, always helping him sort things out. I opened the thread. The first message was from my mom to Mark. She had forwarded a hospital bill and added a note underneath. I adjusted the figures like we discussed. This should put it over the limit. My chest tightened. I scrolled. Attached were PDFs of medical invoices. Totals were circled. Notes were scribbled in the margins. Some numbers looked wrong. Like they'd been altered. Cleaned up. Increased. Another message from Mark followed. "You're saving me. Once this clears, we're good. Nobody needs to know." My mom had replied minutes later. "That's what family does. Just remember to keep playing it up if they call." I sat there staring at the screen, the room suddenly too quiet. I kept reading. There were carefully written emails sent to the insurance company. Photos of Mark's car damage, all from slightly different angles but showing the same dent, staged like evidence. Then a confirmation email from an insurance representative approving the payout. The amount made my stomach drop. Just over $150,000. I leaned back in my chair. Even without legal training, I knew what I was looking at wasn't a misunderstanding or a gray area. This wasn't bending rules. This was fraud. And it wasn't harmless. Further down the chain, I saw an email my mom had sent to my Aunt Laura around the same time. It talked about how family funds were tighter right now, and how some requests would have to wait. I remembered that summer barbecue, Laura quietly frustrated, asking why her medical costs weren't being covered like she'd expected. My mom had brushed it off, blaming policy changes and bad timing. Now I knew why. That money hadn't vanished. It had gone straight to Mark. A few emails later, there were photos. Mark standing beside a brand new RV, beer in hand. Another of him and his wife overlooking some scenic spot, captioned, "About time we enjoyed life." My mom had responded with hearts. "You earned this after everything you went through." I felt sick. This wasn't stealing from some distant corporation alone. It was taking from a system other people in our own family depended on. People who had been told there wasn't enough coverage while Mark cashed in. I scrolled back to the top and reread my mom's words, "Nobody needs to know." Apparently, I wasn't included in nobody. I sat there longer than I realized, the warmth of the laptop pressing into my palms, the ticking clock on the wall sounding louder by the second. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately. To demand answers. To ask how she could lecture me about responsibility while doing this. But I already knew how that conversation would end. She'd minimize it. Rationalize it. Accuse me of misunderstanding, of overreacting, of trying to cause drama. Somehow, I'd be the one apologizing by the end. So instead, I did the only thing that felt safe. I documented everything. Every email. Every attachment. Every confirmation. I saved copies to a private folder, then backed them up to my own cloud storage. When I was done, I wiped the laptop clean just like she'd asked. When she came back into the kitchen, I handed it over. "All set," I said. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." I smiled back and said nothing. For months, that knowledge sat inside me like a weight. I told myself it wasn't my place. That speaking up would only destroy what little peace existed. That everyone would turn on me instead of the people who'd actually lied. Then came my birthday. The half-eaten cake. The laughter. The phones pointed at my face like I was entertainment. That was when it clicked. Staying silent hadn't been protecting my family. It had been protecting the people doing the harm. So when I leaned toward Mark and told him I knew about the insurance, it wasn't a threat. It was a boundary finally spoken out loud. 2 weeks later, when my phone started lighting up with missed calls from him and my mom, voices shaking, panic seeping through every message, I understood something else. That secret no longer belonged to just me. And that was when everything really started to fall apart. She dismissed it immediately, the way she always did when cornered. "Insurance companies reject claims all the time," she said. "Your uncle was actually injured. Some paperwork wasn't clear. That's all this was." Her voice sharpened. "We were trying to protect this family. One mistake and everything could have been taken from us." I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. "You didn't protect anyone," I said. "You helped him turn a fake injury into a luxury RV. And you lied to your own sister while doing it." Her tone dropped into something colder. "Do you realize what you're risking by throwing around words like that? If the wrong person hears you, they could open an investigation. Do you understand what that would do to us?" I stared at the wall across from me, at a cheap framed print I designed myself because real art wasn't in my budget. "Funny," I said. "You didn't seem worried about destroying anything when you told Laura there wasn't enough money for her treatments." She said my name like a threat. "Olivia. I hung up. My hands were shaking, not because I'd yelled, but because I hadn't. I'd stayed calm. I'd stated facts. And she'd still twisted them into an emotional crisis, just like always. A few hours later, my phone rang again. Brittany. I almost ignored it. Almost. What are you doing? She snapped the second I answered. Mom's losing it. Mark's panicking. Laura's asking questions. Why would you say something like that at dinner? Because it's true, I said. And I'm done pretending it isn't. She exhaled sharply. You're about to destroy this family over something that already happened. Do you want Mom to break down? Do you want Mark arrested? Is that really what you want? It was almost impressive how fast they'd shifted from this is nothing to you're sending him to prison. I didn't do anything, I said. I just stopped covering for them. If they're scared, I added, maybe that says something. She made a sound of frustration. You've always been like this. You can't let anything go. You turn everything into some moral crusade. This is real life. People bend rules. People bend rules, I repeated. Got it. I'll remember that next time Mom lectures me about being irresponsible for not having a retirement plan yet. That's not funny, she snapped. You're ruining everything. Laura called me, she continued. She's asking why there's a gap in the records. I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her to talk to Mom, I said. Or Mark. I'm done lying for them. There was a pause. When Brittany spoke again, her voice was quieter. You actually have proof, don't you? Not sent yet, I said. But I will if she asks. She swore under her breath. You're going to blow this whole thing up. Maybe, I said calmly. But the fuse was already there. I ended the call. That night, Kara sent me a link. It was a TikTok Mark had just posted. He was leaning against his kitchen counter, speaking into the camera like a discount motivational coach. The caption was filled with hashtags about jealousy and family loyalty. He talked vaguely about younger relatives who couldn't stand seeing others succeed. About people who'd rather tear someone down than work hard themselves. The comments were split, half calling him out, half praising him. I watched it more than once. Then Kara texted again. He posted this after Mom told him you weren't bluffing. Another message followed. If Laura asks you directly, tell her the truth. She deserves it. The next day, Laura called. Her voice was steady in that careful way people sound when they're bracing themselves. Olivia, she said, I've heard some concerning things. I don't want drama. I just want to understand what actually happened. I looked at the folder on my laptop, the screenshots I'd carried around for months. What did Mom tell you when you asked about coverage? I asked. Laura sighed. She said the policy changed. That there wasn't enough left after Mark's accident. That the family fund was drained. I opened one of the emails, the one where my mom had written that no one needed to know the difference. She didn't tell you about the additional payout, I said. Or what Mark bought afterward. There was a long pause. Do you have proof? Laura asked quietly. Yes, I said. I do. Another pause. Would you send it to me? She added quickly, I'm not asking you to lie for me. I just don't want to keep lying for them. Something inside me loosened. I'll send everything, I said. And I did. Every email. Every attachment. Every confirmation they'd assumed no one would ever read. When I hit send, it felt like setting down something I'd been carrying for far too long. What people don't tell you is that speaking up isn't the hardest part. Waiting is. Waiting to see who believes you. Waiting to see who turns on you. Waiting to find out who decides you're the problem instead of the lie. Over the next few days, my mom sent long messages about betrayal and family loyalty. Mark didn't call at all, he just updated his TikTok bio with some quote about snakes and trust. Kara and Laura, though, kept checking in. No matter how loud they get, Kara wrote, "We're with you." When Laura told me she was speaking to a lawyer and contacting the insurance company, none of us really understood what that would trigger. At first, everything went silent. No calls. No messages. Brittany posted a few throwback selfies with captions about family first, clearly aimed at me, but otherwise, nothing. Then the group chat exploded. It was the same old family WhatsApp thread with the smiling barbecue photo from years ago, where we all pretended things were fine. My mom was first. "We need to be careful discussing Mark's accident. There's confusion about what happened." Mark jumped in right after. "There's nothing to be careful about. Nothing illegal happened. Anyone spreading lies needs to stop." A cousin replied with a confused emoji. Someone else typed, "What's going on?" Then Laura responded. "What's going on," she wrote, "is that I was told there wasn't enough coverage for my treatments because the family fund was empty. But I now have documentation showing a large payout went elsewhere." The chat went dead. Finally, my mom replied, "This isn't the place to discuss private matters." And that was the moment everyone realized this wasn't private anymore. "We can deal with this privately," someone finally typed in the group chat, trying to pull the conversation back behind closed doors. Laura didn't let that happen. She sent one final message. "We had an attorney review the documents. A fraud report has been filed with the insurance company. They'll be reaching out." I wanted everyone to hear that from me directly. After that, the chat went silent. Not officially, no one left, but the energy shifted. Typing indicators popped up and vanished. People clearly wanted to respond, but no one wanted to be the first to choose a side where everyone could see it. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a private message from Riley, one of Laura's kids. "Just so you know, we didn't mention you by name. We said the information came from inside the family. If they put it together, that's on them. We're done protecting lies." For the first time since all of this started, I felt like I wasn't standing alone. The next phase didn't come with drama. It came with paperwork. I wasn't directly contacted at first, but pieces of it filtered back to me. Insurance investigators requesting original invoices. Clinics being asked to confirm treatment dates. Hospitals double-checking records. They pulled phone logs, bank transfers, timelines, anything that could confirm whether Mark's injury matched the version he'd sold. At first, Mark pretended nothing was happening. He posted another vague TikTok about envy and people who can't handle seeing others blessed. But the videos became less frequent. Then they stopped entirely. One evening, my dad called. That alone was enough to make me pause. He almost never called. I stared at the screen before answering. "Hey," I said. "Hey, kiddo," he replied. I could hear the TV murmuring in the background. He hesitated. "You got a minute?" I walked over to the window, watching headlights pass through the parking lot under the streetlights. "Yeah, what's going on?" He exhaled slowly. "Your mom's not doing well. Mark's not either. The insurance company is tearing through everything. Lawyers keep calling. It's bad." I didn't interrupt. "I honestly didn't know," he added quietly. "I knew Mark got a settlement, but I assumed it was legitimate. Your mom handled the details." I didn't ask questions. I believed him. And somehow, that hurt too. "You okay?" he asked. That simple question nearly broke me. "I am," I said. "Since the dinner. Since I stopped pretending. I'm angry, but I'm not confused anymore." "That helps." He went quiet. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For the cake. For standing there and letting them laugh at you. For staying silent because it was easier." I swallowed. "You still don't have to stay silent." Another pause. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted. "You don't have to," I said. "You just have to stop acting like it's fine. A few days later, my mom showed up at my apartment. No warning. Just aggressive knocking that made my stomach drop. I checked the peephole. Her hair was messier than usual. Mascara smudged beneath her eyes. For a second, I considered not opening the door at all. Then I unlocked it and cracked it open. "We need to talk," she said, voice trembling. "About what?" I asked. Her expression hardened instantly. "About your aunt trying to put your uncle in jail. About you handing over private emails like some kind of informant." "I didn't post them online," I said evenly. "I sent them to the person you lied to." "We didn't lie," she snapped, then corrected herself. "We simplified. It was complicated. The system is broken. Your uncle was struggling. You altered medical bills," I said. "You told the insurance company one story and your sister another. You claimed the family fund was empty while money was being redirected. That isn't simplifying." Her face tightened. "Stop using that word." "Fraud?" I said. "That's what it is." She recoiled like it burned. "You have no idea what it's like," she hissed. "Being responsible for everyone. A brother who can't get his life together. Bills coming from every direction. I did what I had to do." "No," I said quietly. "You did what you chose to do. And every time I made a choice you didn't like, you called me irresponsible. You don't get to hide behind a family and now." Her eyes filled. "They're talking about charges," she whispered. "Real ones. Mark could lose everything. I could lose everything. Is that what you want on your conscience?" A strange calm settled over me. "That risk was already there," I said. "You accepted it the moment you sent those emails. This isn't happening because I told the truth. It's happening because you lied." She stepped forward like she might push past me. I blocked the doorway. It was the first time in my life I'd ever physically stopped her from entering my space. She froze, staring at me. "You're really shutting me out?" she asked softly. "You've done a lot for me," I said. "Some of it good. Some of it this. I'm not calling you a villain. I'm saying I won't help you pretend this didn't happen. You're choosing them over me," she said. "I'm choosing myself," I replied. For once. She stood there, waiting, like I'd eventually step aside, let her in, let her cry on my couch and rewrite the story until she was the victim again. I didn't move. Eventually, she looked away and walked down the hall. I locked the door and slid down against it, shaking. It didn't feel victorious. It felt terrifying. But beneath the fear was something steady. Relief. In the weeks that followed, the investigation escalated. Laura told me the insurance company had officially opened a fraud case. And for the first time in my life, the truth wasn't being buried to keep the peace. The investigation dragged on exactly the way real accountability always does, quiet, procedural, and relentless. Investigators requested original medical records, verified invoices directly with hospitals, reviewed time-stamped security footage, and compared Mark's claimed recovery period against his actual movements. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was slow, precise work, the complete opposite of how my family usually handled problems. While they were spiraling, I started rebuilding. I refreshed my portfolio, rewrote my resume, and began applying seriously for full-time design roles around the city. I signed up for a yoga class at the community center a few blocks from my apartment, not because I was chasing inner peace, but because I needed somewhere to put all the tension that had been living in my body. I finally booked a few therapy sessions through a sliding scale clinic, something I'd convinced myself for years was too expensive, even though the cost of carrying everything alone had been far higher. When my phone lit up with angry messages from relatives, I left them unread. When Kara or Laura reached out, I answered. Slowly, unmistakably, I began to see the difference between relationships built on obligation and those built on care. Somewhere between interview emails and downward dogs, it hit me. The reason this was so unbearable for them was because they were finally being judged by the same rules they'd always used on me. They'd preached responsibility, consequences, life not being fair. Now those words were coming back to them, not from me, but from lawyers, investigators, and a sister who refused to stay silent. And as strange as it sounds, that felt like balance. 6 months after that birthday dinner, I was sitting at my desk in a sunlit open office downtown, nudging letter spacing on a client logo, when my phone buzzed. A text from Laura. We got the final outcome. My stomach tightened even though I wasn't the one under review. Do you want to call? I typed. I'll send you the summary, she replied. You should see it. A few minutes later, the email arrived. I opened it and read every word carefully. The insurance company concluded that Mark and my mom had knowingly submitted false information, altered documentation, and misrepresented the extent of his injuries. No soft phrasing. No gray areas. Just a clear determination, fraud. Mark agreed to repay the entire payout, $150,000, plus additional penalties that pushed the total close to $200,000 to avoid court. His employer, who had apparently overlooked a year of incapacitating back pain while he traveled, terminated him immediately for ethics violations. The RV he'd bragged about was repossessed. Not long after, his wife filed for divorce. According to family whispers, she'd said she never agreed to build a life on a lie. My mom wasn't spared. Though the consequences were lighter, she was formally named as a knowing participant. A $10,000 fine. A documented role in preparing and submitting falsified paperwork. For someone who valued her image more than anything, the reputational damage was devastating. Word spread fast. The same woman who used to lecture friends about honesty and values suddenly found herself being quietly avoided. Conversations stopped mid-aisle at the grocery store. Her volunteer organization suggested she step back from leadership. Legal fees forced her to sell her luxury SUV and replace it with something practical and anonymous, nothing that matched the version of herself she'd spent years performing. Britney's social media changed overnight. The curated family dinners vanished. So did the smiling group photos. Her posts turned into vague quotes about fresh starts and protecting your peace. It felt like an attempt to erase the version of our family that had relied on pretending. Meanwhile, my life got smaller in the best way. I got the agency job, the one I assumed I wouldn't land. Full-time. Benefits. Coworkers who talked about my work with respect instead of skepticism. I moved into a slightly bigger apartment, one with windows that looked out on trees instead of asphalt. Kara helped me assemble furniture while we ate takeout straight from the containers, laughing about how my mom would have criticized every mismatched piece. Laura started sending messages that had nothing to do with legal updates. Photos of her dog. Notes about scheduling her own appointments without asking permission. Little, ordinary things. One afternoon, a package appeared at my door with no return name, just Laura's address. Inside was a small chocolate cake from a local bakery. Perfect. Untouched. Written in clean white frosting were 3 words. You deserve better. I stood there for a long moment before cutting into it. Not for social media. Just for myself. A few days later, my dad stopped by with a plant he claimed the salesperson guaranteed even he couldn't kill. He looked tired, older somehow, but calmer. We sat on the couch, the TV humming in the background, and he finally said, I read the report. It was ugly. But I'm glad you told the truth. For once, I believed him. He wasn't minimizing. He wasn't asking me to forgive or forget. He was just present. My mom sent a handful of messages over the following weeks, long, emotional ones about love, betrayal, and how everyone was judging her over one mistake. I didn't respond. I expected guilt. Instead, I slept better than I had in years. Standing up to your family isn't empowering in the way movies sell it. It's lonely. It costs you things. But the freedom is real. I didn't speak up to punish anyone. I did it because staying silent meant agreeing that my dignity mattered less than their comfort. I used to think peace meant swallowing everything and smiling through humiliation. Now I know peace without honesty is just control in softer packaging. Some people will always tell this story with me cast as the villain. That's fine. In my version, I'm just someone who stopped letting herself be written off as the disappointment. That's what came after the half-eaten cake and the quiet truth whispered into my uncle's ear. They lost their money, their image, and their illusion of control. I lost a version of my family I was never really allowed to belong to, and gained a life where I no longer flinch when I look at myself. And that was worth everything.